All right, so we're getting closer to the end of the course here. Tonight we're going to talk about retirement type stuff, estate planning. There really shouldn't be that much new information because all this stuff we've been talking about in terms of investing and obviously saving money so that you have money to invest, it all kind of builds into it. Like I say, retirement planning, your retirement nest egg. When you accumulate wealth, um, you can draw upon that during your working years as well. I took out a huge loan against my 401k just this week because I needed to buy. I guess I'm buying fencing or something, stuff here around my farm, and it's the cheapest source of funds. Plus, right now, there's a bit of market timing involved because inflation and the market's way up, and why nobody quite knows. So, if it I'd rather pull a little bit off at the top, and when I take a loan out, it essentially takes that money out temporarily, and then as I pay it back in, the money in that retirement account goes back up. But the beauty of doing it, taking a loan from yourself under your IRA, I mean it's done through the brokerage firm, but it's transparent to the IRS, transparent to the government, and so it just there's no extra paperwork, extra reporting. There's no taxable activity taking place at all. You haven't taken money out of your account. You've just borrowed from it under the account. So anyway, getting down a rabbit hole right off. So Social Security. I was reading somebody's paper today, and again, term papers are, I'm getting a few coming in, and things look good. I mean, people are obviously a little nervous about what the content should be, but that's because I've given you a fair amount of liberty to determine what content is most useful to you. So anyway, the paper I was reading today, one of the students said something about Social Security since we hadn't really talked about it, and I said to include it in the paper. And his point was he didn't want to enter a bunch of personal information, and the way Social Security works is you build up quarters and you build up time in Social Security, and so the numbers that you would get back right now probably aren't that meaningful. But anyway, he had looked at some paperwork and was saying that the estimates were about $1,500 a month all in is what you'd get from Social Security, which is a nice augmentation, if you've got a regular retirement. But to live off it, if you thought you had to pay rent, perhaps a car, anyway, you're not going to get it done for $1,500. You're going to have to drastically cut back. So anyway, Social Security is, and then if you do have some real wealth, it's not happening now, but there's a concept, means testing is quite popular. When a program, wants to start saving money and they say, hey, this guy's got, 5-10 million in the bank. Why does he need Social Security? And they do means testing. They say, well, we're going to cut those people off, or we're going to give it to the people who really need it, which is fair, but it's also kind of to the other person who, was under the illusion that Social Security is some sort of savings account for you, because that's how they express it, that that's your money being put away. Nope. There is no lockbox. There is no account out there with your name on it. It's a Ponzi scheme. You put money in, and it's immediately given to the people who are already in retirement, and it works fine as long as there's more people working than there are in retirement. Sometimes, like with the baby boomers, when you get a whole bunch of retirees and a smaller generation following it, it gets all jacked up. Or in the case of Social Security, you attach all these other programs. You start putting working age people drawing Social Security because some sort of situation, which is probably, they probably should be helped out by the government, but as a Social Security fund, the retirement sort of fund, the place to draw it from, probably not. But anyway, I'm obviously we all get to vote. I'm not going to tell you what's right or wrong, but I will tell you what it is, and Social Security's insolvent. So something will change big time. But even under the current system, if you were just relying on Social Security, it would not be a pleasant experience. Okay, so does not provide. So they said in one sentence what I just wasted a couple minutes on. 40 credits. So that's what I talked about, where you're paying into the account, so many working type periods, and it's not a big deal. You'll get there. Also available for disabled, so truly, good cause, good needed, but not all the time are these people, whatever, different levels of disability, let's just say. So, survivor's benefits, one-time payment to the spouse, monthly payments. A spouse older 60 has a child under the age or has a child. Good on them. Monthly income payments to 18 to age 19 if still extending secondary school. So, anyway, some caveats for other folks. Retirement benefits. Depends on your income, of your annual income. Not always, and can be reduced benefits. I'm all about that. When I get to 62, I'm taking it. I want my money. I think I can do better. Even though you get more money later on, again, a decision you'll have to make. Probably for most of you a long ways away. But anyway, if you consider yourself fairly skillful at investing or think you can do better than the government, then taking it at 62 is probably not a bad way to go. And this is good too. Can receive limited income while receiving Social Security. Used to be, you couldn't have a second job because you lose your Social Security, and that's kind of sad. A lot of these folks will live longer if they stay active. They may not be out, breaking bricks or doing things like that, but they can, certainly be at Walmart greeting people. If that's a pleasant job, I'm not sure. Anyway, concern about retirement benefits and futures, retiring and living longer. So yeah, when you're estimating how long will you be in retirement, the statistics get all jacked up. And now with COVID too, that I don't know that changed that much. I mean, the average age of a COVID death was older than the life expectancy of the average person. So it really did go after the older folks, but and then life expectancy too. But it's skewed by some numbers, If you're not using opiates, if you're not committing suicide, you're not doing certain things, maybe those numbers don't apply to you, and your true chance of living older are a bit higher. Number of retirees continue to grow, and many people are relying less on Social Security. Well, out of necessity is what that's about. Many people are relying less on Social Security because they don't want to be, having a very meager existence. But my point would be on all this stuff. When you look at Social Security and all this other stuff, you need to realize that you're kind of on your own. There's in terms of retirement, you have to, the onus is upon you. The days of, people working for some big, huge industrial company and having your retirement taken care of you, those numbers are not, there's just not that many companies that do it. And it's not their fault. I mean, if they come to you as a young person and they say, look, we'll give you, 50 grand with full benefits, or we'll give you, 65 grand with no benefits, most people jump right at the 65. So companies are smart. In order to be competitive, they're going to offer more in terms of cash and less in terms of benefits. Or maybe they're cheap and they're going to offer you no benefits and no fees. But anyway, companies now, it's I think the pendulum is swinging to where workers have a little bit more power. Wages are starting to go up. Unfortunately, inflation's running away, so good luck with that. But anyway, so here's a quick calculator that was on the slide there while I was rambling on. But you put in here, let's say somebody who was getting closer to retirement, if they would have been born about 60, they're making 60 grand. So anyway, I'm not entering in any personal data, but you wouldn't want to enter in your true birthday right now because, pardon me, you're not in a position where you retire, but you want to find out, roughly, what you would be getting. Last year, unless you had earnings, so let's say it was this year. So we're going to say 20. Well, let's go with 2020 just to make sure they work it. Let's say we're pulling down 100 grand. When do you want to retire? Well, this guy's born in 60, so what is he? Can't retire just yet. Let's say he's going to retire in, one of 2024. Pardon me. Today's dollars, well, we're close enough to where, close enough. So, yep. So the students who said $1,500, yep, $1,649. So how far is that going to get you? Let's hope you own your home, but how are you going to pay the property taxes? Anyway, you got property taxes, you got electricity, you got food, you got travel. Well, travel's right out. Anyway, so you can see the problem here. So that, and literally, if I was doing a paper right now, and I put in some numbers, I'd go over here and I'd whatever new snip, and I'd put that in the paper, and it addresses what you needed, because now you have some information. Put it in your paper, take credit for it, and move on. But it's good to know that now, and those numbers are going to be inflation adjusted. It's going to be, you're going to be getting $3,000 a month by the time you retire. But again, $3,000 a month will probably buy less than it buys now. So, well, will buy less, but buy less than $1,600 will buy now. Employer sponsor plan. So this is what I was talking about. This is like the dream thing where there's a, the employer's got it for you. They help you save retirements. Employers, penalty for early withdrawal. Typically there always is. Contributions are tax deferred, but taxes ordinary income. So this is not the full up retirement plan that the employer is sponsored in here, but it's not like a 100% type thing. Because there used to be a time when you were, say, working for General Motors or whatever, and you didn't have this matching bit. You didn't have the tax deferred thing. You just had the thing, you work for this company for, 20-some years or retire after age 60, and you got a retirement. Now there's more pieces and parts involved. Let's see what else here. So defined benefit plan guarantees you. So this was what I was talking about. Defined benefit plan is what they're talking about, where it's just the companies on it. This concept of vesting, you need to know about vesting. You'll find that time and time again. Let's say you're going to work for some company, and they've got a match policy with your 401k, and you put down 3%, and they match it with another 3. So now you're getting 6% of your income going into account. But if you read the fine print, you'll probably realize that, hey, if you quit after 6 months, you get nothing. Their match is taken away. They can't take your money, but they can certainly take away their match. And typically the way these schemes work is that, let's say you stay a year, well, you only get 10% of that match money. If you stay 3 years, you get 50% of that match money. If you stay 5 years, you're fully vested, and you get all, not only your money, but also their money. Now, those numbers I just rattled are, probably typical, but they're not absolute. So read the fine print, but when you see something that involves working for a company and there's a vesting program and a match, that's what all those terms mean. So anyway, if a regular retirement plan, most any type of plan where you're relying on the company will have some sort of vesting option. Defined contribution. So this was a defined benefit. Here's a defined contribution. So employer sponsored that specifies guideline on which you and your employer can contribute. It allows you to invest the funds as you wish. And a lot of times there's a modification on that. For example, I've got a 401 with a company I'm still working for, and I have to invest with the company that they've chosen. Now I can, invest with the family of funds that this company's got, In fact, there's a method where I can do a self-directed IRA and invest in individual stocks, but only up to 50% of the total account. And so the funny thing is I can do better in the stock market than these guys can with their general fund. So I'm never able to add any money to the stock size because the stocks, because I've done pretty well on those, it's more than 50% of my total investment. And so even though I'm contributing 10% of my income to their side and not able to contribute any money to the stock side, the individual stocks far outperform 10% of my income. So anyway, but yeah, there's usually some shackles on it as long as you're still working for that company. Decision to contribute. Well, we've talked about this from day one. Wait too long to save, start saving at an early age, contribute. So this is what I'm talking about. This is, quite repetitive. This doesn't just apply to retirement. This applies to everything. Living within your means, starting early, every paycheck, basically pay yourself first, all the concepts we've talked about. Benefits of defined contribution. Yep, it is. If they've got a match and you're letting it go, yeah, you're getting paid less than your coworker. If he's taking the full match or she's taking the full match, they want you to save, obviously, and tax deferred income. So the way any of these tax deferred concepts work, I'll talk about, I'll say IRA, individual retirement account. I'll say 401k or a 403b or some of these other ones. That's because there's different types of business structures. So if it's a commercial type company, some corporation, you would have a 401k typically, right? If you're working for a nonprofit or whatever, typically educators, maybe hospitals as well. I'm not sure, but anyway, they have a 403b. Don't get wrapped up about the numbers. The important part is that these are written on those numbers refer to applicable sections of the IRS code. So who cares? So the important part is that you have some sort of mechanism for a tax deferred retirement plan. And so what happens is when you're in your peak earning years, you've got all this income and kind of know where to hide it because you're probably, you're working for a company, you're not self-employed, you don't have that many write-offs. And so you are paying, the bulk of the taxes. What you're trying to do is you're trying to lower your income, not lower the amount of money you get, but try to lower your income tax. So let's say you're making $100,000 for a company and you decide that you're going to save 20% per year for your retirement or just general savings type thing. But let's say in this case it's going to be for retirement. It's going to go in a 401k or some other tax deferred type account. What's going to happen is those deductions are going to be made at the employer level. So you're going to see on your W-2, you're going to see at the end of the year that although you made $100,000, you're going to see your taxable income is only $80,000. That $20,000 was tax deferred. That $20,000 that went in the 401k was tax deferred. Now, when they say tax deferred, it doesn't mean it's without tax. It means that income is not taxed. That income is the payment of that is deferred until you withdraw it when you're in your retirement zone. And if you're in retirement, your income theoretically is going to be quite a bit less. You're not making $100,000 anymore. You're just living off your retirement. So you got whatever 30, 40, whatever, but it's a different thing. It's not an earned income. So your tax bite is going to be quite a bit lower. So now when you start living off of that money, you start drawing money out of that 401k account, your income tax due is theoretically quite a bit lower. Now all this goes away if income tax in the future are much higher than they are now. So you're gambling that the rates are going to remain relatively stable through your retirement. If you're under the impression that income taxes are going to go catastrophically higher, then you would think, whoa, wait a minute, this isn't a good deal. But, the amount of taxes will probably go up, but the actual percentage, probably not so much. Now, the other exception to this whole thing that we've talked about in terms of retirement plans is this Roth account, a 401k, an IRA. No, it's not a 401k, I'm sorry. It's an IRA, but it's called an IRA Roth. So you have if somebody just says an IRA, they're talking about what would be considered a traditional IRA, a tax-deferred one. If somebody says a Roth IRA, that's just a completely different animal. A Roth IRA, your contributions to it are not tax deductible. You're using after-tax income that you've already paid taxes on. But the beauty of a Roth is that you still have these same constraints where you need to put it in an account and you can't withdraw it until you're 59 and a half. But when you do, assuming you've hit that eligibility, you're 59 and a half now, all the proceeds from that are tax-free. It's already been taxed, and all the accumulation on that money is going to be tax-free. So I've got a situation where I was invested in I think it was Manhattan Associates or somebody. It was some company that was making like restaurant equipment. I didn't know much about it, but I was on a subscription service type thing, and it was a hidden gem. It was some company that was up and going, and it did. I mean, it blew up. It went up like 520% in a year. And so I bought a piece of property up by Chickaloon with that, because I wanted to stabilize that money that I'd made in the stock market. Sometimes, things can be quite volatile. So I kind of got out at the peak, and I bought some property up by Chickaloon, and if that property appreciates, not that I'm really that anxious to sell it, but if I sell it for, twice or whatever number the, price, that's absolutely tax-free. It does not matter. So I'm protected on that. Anyway, so my real estate, holding it under a 401k or an IRA or any of that stuff is quite non-standard, but it's a tactic that I've used to buy some pieces of property that otherwise I couldn't have because I used my retirement funds to buy the property eventually. But that's a bit beyond the scope of this class. But it makes for a pretty complex real estate transaction to a certain degree. But anyway, it can be hugely beneficial. So anyway, we're off in the weeds again. So we did talk about tax deferred type things, and that's what we're talking about when we're talking about 401k, 403b, a thing called the TSP if you're in the military. There's other things for people that are self-employed, all kinds of stuff. Okay, investing funds in your retirement account. Yep, they typically, when I was working full-time for UAA, they dealt with Fidelity, they dealt with TIAA-CREF. TIAA is like teachers something or other. It's an educational type financial thing. Whatever. There's not that much difference between the companies, but anyway, I ended up with Fidelity when I was with UAA, and I could choose anything under Fidelity, which was fine. So you'll see what your company offers, and that's why making your choice of what brokerage firm I should go with, see what your employer offers, and probably pick one of those, because every January when all this mail starts showing up, it's simpler if your accounts are kind of consolidated under one brokerage, but each to his own. So this is what they're saying should happen. I absolutely have never followed this. I've been high risk and kind of continued across. Unfortunately, they're saying the whole bullish market, the with inflation and other things, maybe that cycle is over. But if you talk to an investment advisor, of which I am not, they will say, oh yeah, this is the strategy. You know, when you're young, you can handle all this volatility. Here this person's getting older. A big market correction could be devastating, cut down on the amount of money they have available. And then here this person, he's into the 70s. He should, not be in volatility because he might not be there when the market bounces back. Fair enough. These guys don't address crypto stuff either. But crypto can be high risk to low risk as well. If it's all Bitcoin, as long as you can handle some permutations. But if you're in altcoins, oh boy. Anyway, but it's fun when it goes. But again, that might be one of those things like some of these stocks I've done where you make some money doing something. Try and buy some real estate or something solid with that money. Cash in and take a bit of your profits and buy something that will last, or at least put it in cash and buy the next dip. Anyway, retirement plans offered by employers. So these numbers are getting a little, I guess 2021. So yeah, when I said 20 grand, that's kind of where I came up with that number. If you're above 50 though, you can do this whole catch-up thing. So for most people, I'm saying this salary of 100 grand, that's 20%. That's a good chunk. If you started early though, man, if you really started early, when you're in your 50s, you might actually cut back on your contributions because it's just not that significant compared to the amount of money you have built up because you were smart and you started early. But anyway, matching contributions by some employers. So again, if you see that term match, do it. Figure out what it takes to get that match because that is your money for the taking. Do what you got to do to get that 3% or whatever you got to put up so that you can get that employer to put up his match. And I think one of the companies was, I put up 3 and they put up 6 or something. So it can be even more, dramatic. Tax on money withdrawn from the account. So yeah, wait till you're 59 and a half. Now none of this is not taking a loan against it. Taking loans, you can do it. And I'm whatever, just like I said, I pull out 50 grand and that's not 50% of the account. I think those were the parameters, the IRS parameters. You can't have, more than 50% of your account out on a loan at any one time, and it can't be for more than 50,000. So, but this is actually what they're talking about here, withdrawal. We're actually taking money out of the account. And I did that one time because I was in a bind. I had a daughter in a private school and whatever, divorce and the whole bit, and I didn't want things to get screwed up for her. So I paid a 10% penalty, and I paid that money I pulled out was added, and I was taxed against it, and it was painful. But, you do what you got to do. But anyway, wait till you're 59 and a half, and then you can take out as much as you want. Defined contribution limit 55,000. So there are some stipulations, but high wealth people are usually paid in stock options, and there's things they can work around it if you're one of those kind of people. Roth IRA, an alternative to people by participating companies. Contributions are taxed when contributed. Well, so they're not necessarily taxed when contributed. They're taxed before, it's after-tax money is what they're saying, but not when withdrawn. So if you have an investment that does exceedingly well and it's under a Roth, that's amazing. There's pressure, depending on the administrations, but man, there's a lot of politicians who see that, they think that that's their money that they're losing by people having Roths or even 401ks. It would be tough to get either of these type of plans reinstated these days. And there's lots of people who would love to take that away from people. 403B, so nonprofits, right? Same sort of thing. Simplified, so small companies. same sort of thing. You notice the same age, but sometimes different levels. But it's going to be a tax deferred type. Well, not in that case, as employee can't contribute. But here's firms with less than 100, and now you can contribute. But that's 2015, so it's probably up to about the 19,000 range as well. Change on inflation. So things will change. What you want to know is, okay, I'm working for this company now. What are my retirement options? Because I'm looking for a tax-deferred retirement option. Profit sharing. Some companies do that, even locally. It's good. I mean, if you're running a company and you want motivated people, give them a little skin in the game. Their share of the profits. Employee stock ownership. This, I think I actually added this bullet. There's some people, I think Ford Motor was about to go under, and GM certainly was, without a bailout, would have gone under. Let's say you're somebody with a, GM, General Motors retirement, and you've got a bunch of GM stock. You kind of have all your eggs in one basket. I've got the company I work for, the defense contract. I'm not a big fan of the company anyway, and but I do their employee stock employee stock purchase plan to the max extent. So I can buy 10% of their stock, or 10% of my income can be applied to their stock, and so it shows up quarterly, whatever. As soon as it hits my account, it comes into my Fidelity account, the next day I sell it. I'm not interested in playing the market with their stock or following their stock. I want the money to invest in stocks I want, and but the reason I do it is because they sell me the stock at a 5% discount. So if the stock right now is probably going for, I think it's about $70. Anyway, I'm getting to buy it for whatever. Probably, what would that be? 64 or something a share, 66. Anyway, in those numbers, and so I sell it and I make 5% on it overnight, which is great. So for me, it's almost like a matching thing. And then I take that money and a lot of times because it comes in clusters, it's done quarterly. I'll usually have some investment I want to purchase, or if I have a credit card purchase or something, I'll just roll it into that month. But anyway, if there's a plan, especially if they're selling you the stock at a discount, you'd be foolish not to take it. But be careful about having everything, your employment and everything tied up with a single company. Let's say you're working for GM and, GM goes out of business all of a sudden. Well, where are you? Your job went away. Your future retirement is shot. And all that stock you had was with that same company. So, it's totally not diversified. So, after leaving your employer, you can maintain it there. You may transfer it, and then you may roll it over. So, rollover is a key word. The words you do not want to see are withdrawal or liquidation or anything else. Rollover is really the only word that expresses what you want done to your IRA if you want to keep it in IRA status. And if you're not 59 and a half, you better keep it in IRA status. If you are leaving a company, you say, okay, just close out my 401k and give me the money. You may have just made a huge mistake, because you're subject to a 10% penalty, and that money they give you, that check, is now added to that year's income, and you're probably going to have a whopping year's income, and you're going to be in a higher tax bracket for that last amount of money. So make sure that it's rolled over. So if they're going to cut you a check, it should have your name, but it should say for the benefit of such and such, and payable to whoever. When I've done this before, they wanted to know what brokerage firm it was going to, or if they could do it electronically. That's kind of how I prefer it. But anyway, rolling over is when you're switching accounts without taking it out of that, protected tax-free status. So tax-free while avoiding penalties. Keogh plan for self-employed people. And again, these numbers are probably a little low since those are 2015 numbers. But anyway, just keep in mind that whatever business arrangement you sort of end up in, whether you're self-employed or working for a small company or working for the military or whoever, some sort of tax-deferred plan is what you're after. So an IRA, not too awful different than a 401k, except the amounts are typically lower. So, but same tax deferred, same 59.5. May or may not be tax deductible. Yeah, sometimes you can contribute, but they don't give you a deduction on those because you're above the income limits. So Roth IRA. So advantage of traditional IRA over Roth. Yeah, contributions are sheltered. So again, the amount of money that you're, it's just after-tax dollars go into a Roth. You're taxed before, you're taxed at the time you put them in. And here in a traditional IRA, you're taxed when you withdraw it. But the concept with any of these tax-deferred accounts is that you're going to be in a higher, your ultimate income there is going to be at a higher rate when you're in your prime working years than it is going to be when you're retired, when you withdraw that money. Annuity, sometimes people will do this as a sort of an addition. I don't like annuities. I don't have any annuities. Again, I'm not really a big fan of the big life insurance, companies where I need an agent and all that. I've always just had term insurance until I didn't need it any longer, and then, no life insurance, which is kind of where you want to be. Life insurance, as you get older, gets more expensive, and it's, again, meant to protect you and not protect you. It's meant to protect your beneficiaries to make their life, from a financial standpoint, more or less unimpacted by your death. And so, if you're older, your house is paid off, the kids either did or did not go to college, whatever. All those things that you needed money for, those things have passed. And now you're closer to death, and you present, kind of an uninsurable risk to the life insurance companies. So moving on, you don't need it. Well, anyway, so that's why I don't have a big insurance, company presence with those people. But if you wanted an annuity, you could go to one of these life insurance companies, and you would basically set up this contract type thing. And annuities can be, different things. But an annuity, if you remember back from when we were doing time value of money, it means a series of payments, right? So in this case, annual payments over a specified period. So let's say in a hypothetical thing, you give a company $10,000 and they start cutting you checks every year for $100 for as long as you live. And if you live till next week, that's not such a good deal. If you live to be 100, maybe that's a good deal. So it's kind of almost the opposite of insurance. The longer you live, the better the deal is for you. But contributions are taxable, gains are tax deferred, not suitable substitute. So it's more of an addition, fixed, variable annuities. I mean, this again, it can get complex here. The fixed and variable, it can vary the amounts based upon the performance of the investment. Or you can say, rather than say I give you $10,000 now and you start giving me $100 checks every month, tell you what, I'll give you $10,000 now, and 5 years from now you're going to start giving me $200 checks every month. And that's a delayed or deferred annuity. I mean, you can make these things quite complex. But it's just some of the admin, some of the overhead, some of the commissions make them less attractive. I would prefer just to have a good stock program, and if I'm interested in income from that, I would pick some stocks that are income stocks that provide a dividend, and they're big solid companies, and that's probably a better way to go than getting into all this annuity stuff. But each to his own. Yep. High fees are a disadvantage. Hence the insurance company, hence the person to explain it to you, all those other items. Money withdrawn. Yep. So, commissions to salespeople, look for no load that do not charge and have low management fees. Or find a different investment. Okay, so these next couple of slides are going to show you, just the value of compound interest and the miracle it is. And none of their charts can do justice compared to the Excel spreadsheets that we talked about the first night. Go back and review those. You can really see, with so many more variables. But yeah, this, phenomenal growth. I've been not obsessed with crypto stuff lately, but I'm watching these guys and they're acting like they're financial geniuses. Some guys just, were smart enough to buy a few Bitcoins back in the day, and they make one good decision and now they think they're financial geniuses. Hopefully, they'll get at least a portion of that money and put it in more of a conventional type thing that doesn't quite have the volatility. I mean, everybody should always have some Bitcoin or some of the Ethereum maybe, but I'm not saying to stay out of crypto, but I'm saying to balance yourself and move a little bit over aside into some more stable funds at some point, or write it out. Anyway, estimating your future retirement savings. So again, they're doing what those Excel spreadsheets did a bit better. Yep. So the interest rate's going to, change greatly. And not to say too that I'm not advocating all stocks. There's certain stocks out there. If you watch the Wolf of Wall Street, The Big Short, some of these things, you'll see that. Yeah. So that's why I'm kind of drawn to crypto as well, is to steer clear of maybe some of those people. Although the pump and dump people are definitely in the crypto as well. But there's if you remember in the Wolf of Wall Street, some of those sheets, they call them yellow sheets or whatever, pink sheets, different colors of sheets where they're selling like essentially penny stocks that are valued less than $1. They're not regulated by the SEC, and they're very, very risky. So if you're ever involved in penny stocks, you're not investing, you're speculating. So speculation's fun, so is betting on sporting events and stuff, but it's not necessarily saving for your retirement. So try and keep the concept of speculation and investing fairly bright line between those. Measuring the benefits. So yeah, he's showing his income and then how much he would, it's to lessen that amount that you're paying in taxes. Estate planning. So this gets a bit grim. This is, everything went well. You left, a huge nest egg behind, and people are sad to see you go, but they're not trying to clean up, the mess that you left behind. And so when you're gone, the assets or the estate are the assets that you left after all the debts are paid, and hopefully there weren't too many of those. Estate planning. So if you want to get the wealth to where you want it to get, without it all end up in taxes and lawyer fees and everything else, you have to do some planning. And again, if you're going to have a business or something, having a corporations, they don't die. Sole proprietorships died. If you had a very successful business, but it was a sole proprietorship and you passed away, you've left a huge mess because that business entity no longer exists. If it was a corporation, well, it continues on. So they have like personhood in terms of the court. So anyway, there's things you would do to set up your estate. A will. When we talk about a will, I'm only talking about one thing, and that is the will that complies with that state's laws. It's going to be written. It's going to be, a lawyer or at least a paralegal is going to be involved in the process. You don't do this yourself. You can certainly have some inputs and stuff, but this thing needs to be conform to the legal standards, or you just wasted everybody's time and cost your beneficiaries a tremendous amount of money and delay because it's not going to hold up in court. The court in this case is called probate court. Probates are where estates are settled, and it can be very quick. The guy died with a will, everything's good to go, we just rubber stamp it and off it goes. Or he didn't have a will, or he had some will that didn't conform to legal standards and isn't recognized as a will, and you just created a friggin' mess for these people. So do not do that. Anyway, a legal request for how your estate should be distributed upon your death. It can identify the preferred guardian for any surviving children. Hopefully, that didn't happen. Your children are grown. But anyway, gotta have a plan. Reasons for having a will, certainly. Intestate. If you die intestate, you died. You didn't do what I said. You do not have a will. And, if you go to court, courts are busy, and they're probably a little grouchy and grim, and, you did not, show any interest in taking care of matters, and why should the court? So, yeah, it's going to take a while, and it's going to be expensive and time consuming, and some lawyers, anyway, it's just not a pretty situation. Court appoints an administrator, probably not the top of his law school or business school class or whatever. It's not going to be somebody who you want looking over your items. So, creating a valid will. So, yeah, you got to be of legal age, mentally competent, not under the influence of others, signed and dated, 2 or 3 witnesses, use of attorney recommended. So let's say, first off, do you need a will? If you're just some single person with nobody relying upon you, then yeah, it's not a big deal. You still have one, but the necessity for it is probably not that great. If it kind of goes along with well, it's different than insurance, but if you've got a lot of people relying upon you, it's very smart to have a will. And it's not that expensive, not that time consuming. Find somebody who does wills. I've always done mine through the military, even still, but it's not that difficult, especially in times of word processors or whatever. They'll give you some worksheets. You'll fill them out to a certain extent, sort of fill in the blank. You'll return them to them, or maybe fill it out online. They'll set up an appointment. All those blanks now are in a couple 3 pages or whatever the length of your will is, and you go in there and they say, okay, here's your will, and they grab like 3 random people, whoever happens to be walking through the office, to sign it. You don't know these people. The witnesses are not. It's not that kind of thing. They're just somebody put their signature on there, and boom, you got a will, and you're good for 3 to 5 years or whatever till some life event happens. And these goofy wills like on TV where I leave, this to my friend and this to my other friend. No, you can just put by law or make it specific or all of my assets or something like that. When you start, specifying certain pieces of real estate and certain pieces of every time you move, you've got to redo that will. You can do a codicil, which is an amendment to a will basically, or you can get a whole new will, but you kind of screwed up by making it so specific. Now, if you get married or if you move states, yeah, you gotta, because probate and wills and all that, that's a state thing, right? So it's got to be good in the state that you're currently living in. And if your life definitely changes by getting married or something, yeah, that would change as well. But if you're somebody, squirting out kids and every time you have a kid, you don't have to change the will. No, it's amongst my children or whatever, rather than specifying names and things like that. So anyway, I'm not a lawyer, but a good lawyer, or in this case, a paralegal. Lawyers are, I don't know, $250, $300 an hour maybe. Paralegal is not, I don't know, what do they get, 65 or something like, and they're perfectly capable of doing this and doing a will. And so anyway, somebody with that background, they can knock this out and they'll advise you, better than I can on what should be in the will and how to make it a will that will be, satisfy the legal requirements but also hold up for a couple 3 years. Common types of wills. So they're going to get all this. Yeah, this isn't that important. Simple will, yeah. Traditional marital share, yep, you can put however you want to divide that up. Distribution of estates to heirs by percentages, could. Usually it's just equally, something like that, unless you're a whatever. Executor, so this is the person who's going to, take care of the will. And the executor, what happens is you pass away, and there's a certain time, you own the bank account, but now it goes into your estate, and they typically set up a trust, and the trust is a legal trust. It's an entity that can have access to the bank accounts and all these different accounts. And let's say you owned a house and you had a car and you did this and you did that, they'll sort out your estate. They may decide that, and again, it's still discuss this with the beneficiaries, but they'll decide to sell the vehicles or give the vehicles to whatever beneficiary. But anyway, they make sure all the burial stuff, all those bills are paid, and everything's settled, right? And all the bills are paid, and now this is what's left over. And that's what's left over, that's distributed out to the, distributes the proceeds of the estate to the heirs. And then, okay, I guess we're done with the trust, and we close it up. And there you go. If you're a super high wealth person, the trust may stay around for a while and may do some other works or something like that. But for most people, no, they'll close the trust once all the assets are distributed. Guardian, yeah, this is sad when children are involved. Signature validates the will. Last letter of instruction. You can do that, but that's going beyond the will. What you need is the basic items. You need the signatures. You need the witnesses. You need something that looks common in court and is not going to be challenged. So changing the will, yep, if you got married, move to a different state. And so again, in the times of word processing, it's just easier. We're not having to type this thing out by hand. We just hit print, rip out a new one, sign it off, and go with it. So probate is that court I was talking about. They make sure it's all looks good. Executor files the phones, opens that bank account, where everything is going to settle in and settle out from. Wife Karen A. Smith. I see. I think the guy's already getting too specific. Anyway, naming children. If you just, maybe that ship has sailed. Maybe you're not having any more kids. But to my children, and if it's only Cheryl, well, good enough. She's, they can figure that out. She gets 100%. Anyway, I'm not a lawyer. So there's certain legal documents that you gotta kind of know and kind of be familiar with. Another thing that I'll touch on real quick is called a power of attorney. A power of attorney allows somebody to act as if they were you. So let's say you're leaving the state, you need a car sold, but you can't be here. You got a friend who's going to take care of it for you, but in order to do that, they need your permission. So you do a limited power of attorney. A power of attorney to act as you in regards to that selling of the vehicle. Do not do a general power of attorney, because then you come back and he sold the car and the house, and kept the proceeds or whatever. So anyway, again, you go to a lawyer to get a power of attorney done, but one of the other things you do with excise or estate taxes. Yeah, so these numbers are typically up in the millions, although, current administration, they're probably going to try and reduce those. Now, if you've done proper estate planning, and you're in your 70s, you're not going to be around that much longer, you probably should have started transferring that money to the children already to avoid some of these things, or at least know what those limits are. So let's say you're a big farmer and you got a ton of land. You should have kind of formed a corporation. You should have, brought in some of the children, and they should be. So, because literally, when you hear about people losing the farm, that's because, this farm is now yours. It goes to the kids, and there's the court saying, we needed the taxes paid on that in cash. Nobody has the cash, and so now the farm is sold. So it can be a big business, a big whatever, but a farm is what they always say, because it kind of pulls at people's heartstrings. But yeah, you've done pretty well. 11.4. So for most of us, it's not that big a deal. No state taxes in Alaska. But when you are above those limits, yeah, they can be high, 40%. I'm sure if you're living in California and New York, you're going to find out a lot of other taxes that are imposed upon your estate. Alaska, probably not so much. Yeah. That's a nice problem to have. So a different sort of trust. I had a trust, or the trust I referred to before was just sort of to get the estate resolved. Here they're setting up a trust as a larger entity to avoid taxes or help with gifts or contributions. Living trust, revocable trust, irrevocable living trust. Anyway, you can get into more things. The important thing to take out of this section is that you need to have a will. If you've got a revocable trust, that's just kind of a weird concept. A trust should be irrevocable. You can't say, I promise to do whatever, and then I change my mind. I revoke it. So that's probably not something you want done. But there are certain situations where, let's say somebody's got, one of my daughters, she was going to a nice school down in Georgia, and there was a man there who had this big, beautiful home, and the taxes were just eating him up, and he decided to donate it to the school upon his death, and in exchange for that, they, quit charging him property taxes since that it had put that house into a trust, that the agreement was he could continue, to live in it for the rest of his natural life, but yet it was not charged any more property tax. And then the old guy, he got a new girlfriend, he continued to live. He was like in his 90s or something. It was so funny because this school was kind of built around this house, and the dude just, he wouldn't die. Good on him. Standard Family Trust. So anyway, if you get to be in these sort of situations, you got some money and you're going to get a good lawyer and you're going to figure it out. And that's why some of these things where they say they're gonna tax the rich. Yeah, good luck with that. The rich can move. The rich can avoid things. They wouldn't be so interested in why any transfers of greater than $600 out of your bank account when their interest is only to tax people who make $400,000 a year or more. Yeah, that doesn't add up, not a bit. Anyway, gifts, tax-free distribution up to $15,000 per year. So you can actually give money to get, but again, if it's just given as a gift, there are limits on it. You could certainly give all you want to a charitable institution, charitable organization. So, I mean, if you are in that situation and you're going to take 40%, and you're like, I'd rather the, whatever, Cancer Society have it more than just taxes. I'm going to take it down to this level so that, I'm going to give that money away or whatever. There's things you can do, but you kind of got to know that you're getting close to death, or do the estate planning and have it figured out and just sort of on autopilot. Living will, yeah, not necessarily in the personal financial realm though. Power of attorney, I touched on that. So you should never have just a regular power of attorney. There should typically always be limited power of attorney for specific decisions. Yeah, if you just give them a power of attorney, you can just eliminate that word specific. You've given them a power of attorney to do whatever. So you want a limited power of attorney to deal with the sale of a vehicle, deal with the sale of whatever. But anyway, durable power of attorney. Maintaining your state documents. So the beneficiaries need to know that there are these documents somewhere, because you're dead. You're not around. So, if they're all in a safe somewhere or a safe deposit box or whatever, they need to know where they're kept and maybe have a copy. It doesn't need to be like the big drama on TV where they do the reading of the will. Estate planning information, certainly. Life insurance policy, or at least the existence. I mean, the insurance companies, they don't even know to call. They don't call every year to find out whether this person died or not. So, retirement account information, certainly. Home ownership, mortgage, all that stuff's recorded, but nice to know what property's out there. And that you're going to get the tax bill, so they'll figure it out pretty quickly. Personal property, personal loans, credit card debt information, ownership of business, personal. So most of these, documents are available through the public. But it's always good to have copies of your records. Personal tax returns, bank account information, investment information. Again, I mean, if everything's paperless, they at least, now they need access to your email or whatever and all the passwords. They could reestablish that, a lawyer could, but it's going to make it more difficult. So, all right, so that's about it. So anyway, this section just built on a lot of stuff we talked about. You're going to see other things, in there. You're going to see, I think I mentioned already, if part of the savings plan, because again, I don't think a retirement plan is completely separate from just wealth savings. My strategy, I think most people's strategy, is to set aside money for use in retirement, and then I've leveraged that money, used that money throughout the course of my life, and then when I retire, ultimately I'll use it for income. But things like 529 plans. 529 is a method I talked about before, that if you're saving for kids' education, it's all the money in those accounts are the capital gains and the appreciation and dividends are all tax-free, as long as those funds are used for education. So you'll see more if you go into some of the brokerage sites and look at some of the different setups. You'll which one we haven't talked about. I don't think we've gone to Vanguard. Vanguard's another big company that you may be involved with at some point. Huge. Again, these guys dump a ton of money into their accounts. Typically, we're looking at personal investors, retirement plan participants, if you're already in that situation. Institutional investors, those are, unions and state retirement things. Financial professionals, not quite yet. Global, no, we're here in the States. So, personal investors. And then what we offer, investor resources, education savings. Right there at $5.29. So it's super popular. Anyway, so when you're trying to get, I know how it is. You're trying to do your term paper, and you're trying to figure out where to start, where to go, and how am I going to just go to one of these sites and start digging around. And when you see something interesting, plunk in some numbers. Now, again, I think I've made this clear. I'm not looking for your personal data. I'm looking for somebody, because you're forecasting where you're going to be at a certain point in your life. So, the person that you're, mythically writing this report about should have attributes that are pretty close to your own, but they don't have to. Number one, you're just kind of guessing anyway. But so I'm not looking for a bunch of your personal information, but you kind of look at what you're doing. So 20 to 49, you're saving, getting ready to retire, living it. So yeah, go back to that Social Security and see how much you're living at $1,649 a month. That ain't a whole lot of living. But explore your robo-advisor. I'm not a big fan of robo-advisors, but for this project, it might work out. Let's see what they got. I think not too far into this process. Yeah, they want you to start putting in all your personal information, and they're trolling for you. Digital advisor, $3,000. Anyway, yeah, this person's going to give you some advice. One last thing while we're there. Well, yeah, just be aware that, free advice is often worth what you pay for, or sometimes even worse. Especially now, there's tons of pump and dump type things out there. People are telling you they're going to get rich quick. Realize that those people may own a position with that, crypto coin, or with that stock, or with that whatever, and they're trying to get you to buy in it to create demand, to generate the price, and then dump it. Sites like this are not quite like that. So there might be some good stuff on YouTube, but probably 1 out of 10 are actually people that you should be listening to. Anyway, that's enough.